She is the Republican candidate for Florida House District 31. And I know we all know a lot about her, and I'm not going to go too far into the biography with her because I want to give her a chance to really come up and tell us a lot more about herself. We've all seen her in some of the forums previously. But I will tell you that she has a degree in nursing, a master's of science in counseling and psychology. Her experience is nursing supervisor, teaching, guidance counselor, proactive business leader, and political advocate. So I'd like to welcome Grassel to come up and present herself.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Can you hear me now? Okay, good deal. I usually have to lower the mic. Thank you so very much for this opportunity to come and speak to you today. I always like to tell my story, and I like to know that I have 15 minutes because I can do 3 minutes or 3 hours, or anything in between. You just let me know. On your table, I have left you a flyer that has pictures all the way around it of just a few of the community service activities in which I'm involved. And we'll get to some of that later. You also have my RAC card, and it kind of summarizes things. So what I'm going to do is take the RAC card and just kind of expand on some things that I really want you to know. People ask me why I'm running for this race, and I'm doing it because I think things in Tallahassee are broken. When I go up there, I've been going up since 1989 and advocating for patients and nurses and our autonomy and our family values. And then later, as my career evolved into teaching for teachers and educators and students and their families also. But what I've seen over the last few years is that when things are debated in committees or even on the House, people will actually turn their back on the other party or walk out of the room. I mean, there was a time back in the 80s and the 90s where people could have a healthy debate on the floor and then go out to dinner. And I believe very strongly that you can disagree and dislike someone's position on something without disliking the person. And I have always tried to be very, very cautious and cognizant and respectful of everyone's beliefs. Because in Lake County, we are a Republican county, but we have folks from all walks of life and from religion. I'm a woman of faith, I'm a Christian, but I have friends who are Jewish, and I have friends who are Catholic, and everything in between. And I'm a moderate conservative Republican. I think that's what sets me apart from the other candidates, is that I am a moderate conservative Republican. I've said that. That's how I was raised. My family was die-hard Republicans. I remember as a very small child, I'll tell you where it was, very small child, living up in Virginia, when my mother took me to the airport because President Eisenhower was flying in. And as he got off the plane, my mother said, look, that's President Eisenhower. We voted for him. So I grew up with the Republican values, but my family also were very involved in community service activities. They did things with the Red Cross, American Heart Association, the Scouts, all of those things that I learned to do for my community. So that's why I'm running. I think that I can collaborate with folks. I think that I can work with folks on both sides of the aisle, or in the House, it's the front and the back of the room, without compromising my beliefs. I don't always have to get my way. I know that. I sometimes never get my way. But I learned from my work as the president of the Lake County Education Association how to compromise, how to collaborate, how to negotiate to get the best of both worlds. And it very often is a give-and-take situation. So that's why I'm running. We have too many unfunded mandates coming down from the state. That's got to stop. If they want to mandate it, they need to fund it. If they want to tell us that we've got to do something, they need to put their money where their mouth is and fund it. We need more local control. The state doesn't need to be telling us what to do here in Lake County. And district. We need to stop that. So that's the kind of stuff that's why I'm running. Some things that I want to do, and I'm on the back here. New apprenticeships and entrepreneurships and increased vocational opportunities. My first job as a teacher was as a nurse at Lake Tech, working in the vocational department. I taught what's called allied health, or the patient care technician. And those were the helper bees. But they were the helpers. And they did the phlebotomy, the EKG, the blood sticks for glucose monitoring, all of those kinds of things to free up the time for the nurses so that they can do their jobs. And I think we need good everybody's. I really believe that we need to increase the skills of our workers coming into the market, because otherwise businesses won't come. And I'm really involved in economic growth. I've spoken at several of our business leaders throughout the county, and they are willing to increase their entrepreneurships and internships for students coming through Lake Tech or some of our vocational programs in the high schools, so that they can get on-the-job training and teach them that way. I also want to make sure that those types of opportunities are available for our veterans returning. Our veterans returning back to our community have those work ethics, the work habits. They're there, they're on time, they're dressed appropriately. Those kinds of things that help you be invested in your company and invested in your economy so that you can do a good job. So I want to make sure that those are available for them also. Healthcare is another issue for me because I'm a nurse. And that's me. Sorry, Susan, that's okay. Since it's you, it's perfectly all right. As a nurse, healthcare is very, very important to me. And there are two main things that I believe as a nurse through my experience. Number one is we have to keep primary care patients out of the emergency room. That's the most expensive health care around, is in the emergency room. And we need to have someone have access to being able to go for blood pressure monitoring, colds, flus, those types of things to keep them out of the emergency room. The other thing that I feel very, very strongly about is that your healthcare decisions need to be out of the hands of the insurance companies. Your healthcare decisions need to be created between you and your healthcare provider. Your insurance company can pay or not pay whatever they want to pay for it, but the decisions on what tests to have done, what treatments, what meds, those are between you and your healthcare provider. And I guess many people that I've talked to have said, well, I've gone to the doctor and they said I need this, but I can't. Insurance says, no, I got to do this first, and I can't get this done. It ends up costing more money for the consumer and for the insurance companies, and I just believe that needs to stop. The red tape for all of us, but especially for our veterans, and this has been an issue of mine even before all this scandal came about nationally about the veterans' care. Because when I did most of my nursing was in pediatrics, and I wanted to be the very, very best pediatric nurse I could, so I earned the American Nurses Credentialing Service Center's advanced certification in pediatrics. So for very long, while I was still in practice, I was an RNC for being certified in it. But I also did mental health nursing. And I worked at Lifestream Behavioral Center in their inpatient facility. I was a nursing supervisor for the acute care unit and the crisis stabilization unit. And I saw folks that came in so afraid for anyone to know that they had a mental health issue because they were afraid that their community, their family, their colleagues would look badly on them. I also had a client one time who was a veteran. We had lots of veterans that came through. But this gentleman, every time a helicopter would fly over, would fall to the floor in the fetal position and just shake from post-traumatic stress syndrome. These folks need help, and the sooner they get help, the better. Some of our veterans returning now need extensive rehab. And I think most of us understand that the sooner you get into rehab, the better your prospects are of getting better. You know, if you start your physical therapy, your occupational therapy as quickly as possible. If you've ever known someone who's had a stroke, get that started immediately. That helps them. And, you know, folks, our military is a voluntary enrollment. And I want the best and brightest enrolling and are signing up for our military. And if they know ahead of time that, wow, my country's going to take care of me if I come back injured, rather than having to wait 6 months or a year to get a doctor's appointment, I'm going to sign up. I want the best and brightest. I don't want somebody in there who can't get a job anywhere else and they have nowhere else to go. That's going to lower the quality of our military, and we need a strong military. So, again, that's why I go to the hours. I think the mental health issues are very important also for safety, because I'm all in favor of maintaining your right to bear arms. It's in the Constitution, it's in your Bill of Rights. You have the right to bear arms, and I will protect that at all the way. But we need to provide mental health services to folks who need it. Because anything you read about or hear about the violence that takes place throughout the country, very often it was at the hands of someone who had mental health instability issues. And if we could make it easier and less stigma attached to receiving those mental health issues, I think we'll all be safer. I talk to retired folks who say, I'm afraid to go to the movies. I'm afraid to go shopping because the violence has happened at the movies and in the stores, even in churches. So we need to make sure that we can address and provide services for folks like that. Now our natural resources. I have 3 minutes. My natural resources. Okay, cool. Thanks. Give me 30 seconds to stop when we get to the end, okay? Natural resources is very important to me also. The businesses that I've talked to say that the parks, lakes, streams, all of those things that we have here that make Lake County so great and make it a wonderful place to live are one of the reasons that they brought their business here. Because their employees then and their families can enjoy the lakes, parks, and streams and all of those resources, all of those family activities that make a good family community. Also, we have revenue-based events that take place in our lakes and parks and streams. We got the bass fishing, we got bird watching, we got a bunch of things that are coming here that help us as a source of revenue for our community. So I think it's very important that we protect those. I'm a woman of faith. I don't push my faith on anyone else. I accept everyone because I believe you have the right to believe what you believe. This is a free country. But my faith leads me in a way that's honest and ethical. And those people who know me very well or for very long know that the things that I try to be are honest, ethical, kind, and generous. Those are the things that I work on trying to stay at all times. I also try to give back to my community. I'm the parish nurse at our church. I have been for probably 15 years. It's a voluntary position. Many parish nurses are paid. Mine has never been. It never was set up to be a parish nurse as a paid position. Some of the pictures on here, we do blood drives. I do blood pressure monitoring. I've had grief support groups. I've written a book for children who are going through grief and loss. It's a workbook that's been used throughout our district, and it was also sent after Hurricane in New Orleans. Katrina, yes, brain hiccup. Hurricane Katrina to some of the schools for those children who had lost everything. It's a coloring workbook for concrete learners. So I've tried to give back to the community. I'm a member of the Tavares, the East Lake, and the Lake Eustis Chambers of Commerce. I've worked with Colleen for many years. She and I went through Leadership Lake County together back in, 96, I think? Something like that. 2006? 2000 something? 2000? Yeah. We were in Leadership Lake County together.
2000 yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. And I really believe that our local chambers do a wonderful job of supporting our communities and supporting education. We had a great program last night over at the East Lake Library where our elected officials came and read the Constitution. It was amazing. It was so heartwarming to see families there and then giving back to the community. So I belong to those groups. I'm a library supporter. I'm a member of the Friends of the Library for Tiberias and Astor. I joined Astor because it's way far away, and very often our local or our county library kind of dismisses the little tiny library sometimes. And so I figured if I can be a friend of that library and find out a little bit more of what's going on, and I attend some of their meetings to hear what their concerns are also. I believe in a hand up, but not a handout. I believe and that's a Habitat for Humanity slogan. I believe that there's some people who will always need a hand up. Some of our disabled, some of our folks who really cannot work. But a handout, the generational welfare has got to stop. We have abuses in Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, all of that happening, and we need to tighten those reins. If we did that, we would have more money for public education. I believe in personal and professional accountability. I'm all for teachers being held accountable, nurses being accountable. As citizens, we're held accountable. But that needs to be with valid and reliable measures. As a nurse, when I wanted to give medicine or treatment to a patient, I wanted to know what those lab values were, and I wanted to make sure those lab values were valid and reliable before we did anything. So that kind of data is very important to me. And I also like to look at the unintended consequences, whether it be a medication, whether it be a bill that comes down that affects us, our environment, whatever it happens to be. What could happen negatively as a result of that? And sometimes those unintended consequences can really come back to bite you. So, in closing, I want to tell you that I believe that I have the education. I have a bachelor's of science. I started at Lake Sumter Community College and got an associate degree in nursing there, and then went to and got my bachelor's of science in nursing. Then I proceeded to get my master's of counseling and psychology. And when I became a guidance counselor, just like in nursing, when I wanted to be as good as I could be, I earned my national board certification in school counseling. The first year it was offered, I went through and earned that degree. That was rigorous, but the best professional development that I have ever attended and ever took part in. So I believe I have the education that gives us a broad spectrum of what's needed in Tallahassee. I believe I have the experience through my community service, my faith-based organizations, the school-based organizations, and my experience by testifying in Tallahassee since 1989. I know how to analyze the bills, I know how to look for the fiscal impact, I know how to look for the staff analyses, and I can go through the big budgets. As Vance knows, I would go through the school district budget, line by line by line by line. And so I know how to analyze those things. And I want to take that experience with my education to Tallahassee. And I would appreciate your vote, your consideration of your vote, because I'm in green because I'm ready to go. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I have two questions.
Sure.
One is, if there's a 75-45 currently in the House of Representatives, 75 Republicans, something like that, what would be the point to having this ability to reach across an aisle? In other words, that's a pretty significant majority.
Yeah, but we don't know what's going to be next.
What is your question? We didn't hear.
It's
question
75, I'll do it with the mic, okay? It's a 75-45 majority in the House right now. So what's the advantage of having someone who can reach across the aisle? I think it goes down to good government. I believe it works with getting them to vote for us and letting us find out. I don't think that any bill is all bad or all wrong just because it's proposed by a D or an R. I think there's some things that might be good in many bills. Some of them I would not want anything to do with. But I think that collaboration is something that we're missing now. And I think that we need to stop the adversarial form of government and start working together.
My second question is, what's your position on the Blaine Amendment?
Blaine Amendment.
What is that? It's 15 words. It's, has to do, it's the basis behind why the Florida Supreme Court had to rule against Bush in homes, against Bush's position with vouchers. It's the only state in the country that has a Blaine Amendment, and it was put in because it was some religious bigotry. It was, I believe, the Speaker of the U.S. House.
Yeah. I remember it, but I would have to study that more deeply before I could really give you an educated opinion on it. But I do remember it.
What about vouchers?
Vouchers? I believe in school choice. Let me backtrack just a moment on that. I believe in school choice. I believe that there are lots of ways of providing a quality education, whether it be homeschooled, whether it be private parochial schools, or profit schools, or public education. The U.S. Constitution, the Florida Constitution says that we will provide a free and adequately funded, free and appropriate education for all students. I just can't wrap my head around taking our tax dollars and giving them to for-profit schools. If they charge tuition, then I don't think that they need our tax dollars. I think it's taking money away from our public education that is guaranteed by the Florida Constitution. So, at this point, not for private, for-profit schools. No, I'm not in favor of vouchers.
Regardless of the data that may come out.
Yeah, it's still tax dollars going to, for-profit education. Okay? Anything else? Yes?
I have a question. I don't really understand, I guess, the definition of a moderate conservative. Is that like you're pro-choice, but you're a woman of faith? Or can you define that for me? That's confusing.
Okay. A moderate conservative, many strong conservatives are pro-voucher. I understand that. And not necessarily pro-public education, which I am. And as far as pro-choice or pro-life, I am not in favor of abortions. I think abortions, I would love for them to never have a need for them. However, I don't think the government should say whether a person can or cannot have one. I have never had a child who was raped. I have never had a child who was pregnant, a daughter or a family member who was pregnant and had a life-threatening situation and had to choose between an unborn child and the mother. I hope I never have to make that kind of decision. So I just think government needs to stay out of it. I just think government needs to stay out of it. Yes, Vance?
I've noticed in the District 31 race that several, probably all the candidates, constantly keep bringing up issues that are federal issues.
Right.
Because they're hot button and they want to get sympathy. And yet, to me, a lot of them has no relevance to this race because this is a state position. But you talked about veterans, you talked about gun rights, you talked about federal welfare. Well, those are all federal issues that, as far as I know, a state legislator couldn't do a whole lot to affect those. And so I will bring up something that I think that a state legislator can have an impact on, and that's property rights. And in this state, we are hit with, in my opinion, a wave of overzealous environmentalists who want to block property rights at every turn. We saw that at the recent events where they tried to stop peat mining, and I read all the literature. I went to 2 of the community meetings plus a board meeting and the Lake County Water Authority meeting on it. And I saw these overzealous environmentalists led by Nancy Hurlbut, the chair of the county Democrats, using a lot of half facts, hot button emotional issues and everything else to try and destroy the property rights of a person, actually a group of property owners that were working with a guy who wanted to harvest this peat out of a bog so he could redevelop a lake that used to be there back in the 40s. And what's your stand, one, on property rights, and what will you do to ensure that property rights are held to in this state?
A very simple answer for that: follow the law.
Well,
Follow the law. I am a law-abiding citizen. I believe in following, I don't break rules. And if it says that it's the right, then that's the way it goes.
well, let me then, since you say that, then immediately, another thing that these environmentalists do is they push through comprehensive land use plans that are very detrimental to property rights with a huge number of restrictions, everything from you can't develop it where you go for tortoise there, as opposed to let the environmentalists go grab the gopher tortoise and remove it.
They're easy to relocate.
And we've got those comp plans now all over the state, pushed through by grants that came through American Planners Association that was started by Bill Clinton. And so that's a law that actually should be ignored, frankly, or revised. And even Governor Scott recognized that and basically shut down a lot of the state level actions and said now the counties can revamp those laws. And some are revamping them. There are other counties that are starting to throw out whole sections. This one, they're tending to just not enforce things until they get sued. And so again, there's comprehensive land use. That's something that could be addressed by the legislature. And have you studied it enough to know what you might do or initiate to help protect property rights?
I would have to talk to the folks who are actually involved in it, because I attended some of the same meetings you did and listened to the same presentations. And that's what I'm basing my opinions on. It needs to be a local decision. It doesn't need to be a federal decision. It needs to be a state or local decision based on what the citizens want. And I base everything that I'm going to vote on in Tallahassee on what the citizens and constituents want. Daniel Webster had a wonderful thing that he said, and I think it's great. If he believed that at least 51% of his constituents would be in favor of something, he would vote for it. You're going to make 49% mad, but at least 51%, because that's who you're here to represent. Not your own personal beliefs, but to represent the constituents. Okay? Thank you very much for...
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, great job. All right, if you haven't already signed up for next month's luncheon, please do. We have